Let us recreate the black man. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video, along with some other things. There was some recent headlines that came across my feed that served as even more reminders of the continual onslaught against the image of the black man. And we're going to get into that a little bit. And I'm just going to tell it the only way I know how to tell it. So we're going to get into that. So really appreciate you guys being here. And I hope you guys had a wonderful day and wonderful week and all of that stuff that we usually say here. But we're going to get right into it. Make sure if you haven't checked us out over on our website, which is sambatree.com, we don't just talk about the news. We also talk about solutions. We also present solutions. In fact, we are a solution. I mean, literally. I mean, if you check out our website, sambatree.com, we understand that, a lot of the things we deal with, it starts with our health. If you want to understand these current events and topics and things like that that's going on, well, you're not going to just get it by just scrolling over and over again. I mean, it really starts with your health and your wellness and all of that. And that's what we're committed to. So make sure you check us out over on sambatree.com. We're all about, there's natural herbs, there's powders, there's oils, there's creams, there's all kind of stuff. Make sure you check us out again over at sambatree.com. Okay, so there's a few things I want to touch on before we get to our main topic. Number one is this recent Supreme Court ruling. Now, I am not a legal scholar. I am not going to pretend to be one. But I can kind of give you a very kind of layman's terms explanation of what took place in this recent ruling. First of all, we have a lot of people on social media that are screaming to the top of their lungs saying that black people have lost their voting rights. And they're saying this over and over again. And it's usually the usual suspects. These are people who are part of Greek letter organizations, the Boule. These are the main suspects that love to scare black folks. And no, black people have not lost their ability to vote at all. Your vote still counts just like everybody else's. If you follow this platform, let's take it from the top again. What I have said many, many times. Number one, do you really think, let's take a look at Apple, okay? Let's take a look at Apple Computer. Do you think that the top brass of Apple Computer is going to make some critical decisions about the direction of their company based off an employee that works in the lunchroom? Do you really believe that? You really believe that when they make their decisions on who they're going to invest in, what new product they're going to come out, what company they're going to take over, do you really think they care about the opinion of the person who works in the lunchroom or the person that cuts the grass? Do you actually believe that? Well, the United States is a corporation at the end of the day. It is a corporation. And yes, we can vote. We go through the motions of voting and we do all that stuff. Once you get to the federal level, and this is something I've said many, many times, there are certain decisions that are already made for us. Okay? If you think for one moment that your vote is the final deciding factor in who sits in the White House, well, you better think again. I mean, we've talked about this, and it's not just us. There are many other platforms that have been talking about this. Now, when it comes to voting, as I've always said, that if you're, voting is real world more effective when you are dealing on more the local level. In other words, for school board, or even mayor, for city council, that kind of thing. That's where we really see, the one man, one vote thing really play out. But once we get to a certain level within the world of politics, well, now you have billions of dollars that are at stake and are at play. And your vote, regardless if you're black, white, whatever, it's not really going to matter. We just tell ourselves that. And I know some people don't want to believe that, but it's true. Again, it doesn't matter what color you are. Okay. So anyway, with that being said, okay, so what basically happened down in Louisiana, there was a case involved dealing with gerrymandering, and that's basically the act of where people within government, politicians, can decide, okay, they can redraw district maps, basically, right? And so this was what was going on down in Louisiana. So they, you had one side saying, no, the Republicans, they're doing this to benefit their base and all of that, right? Whereas the people on the left were saying that, if they can't do this, because of the, it's wrong. But the Republicans were saying, no, we got an issue here. We got an issue here because the people on the left, what they're trying to do is to redistrict based off of race. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. And they're actually right. You can't do that. Now some people listening to me right now, you may get offended at that. Okay, well, play it all the way out. Okay. So we can have a district that we can honestly say you're okay with districts being assigned as these are white districts, and these districts are in existence to ensure that only white. I mean, you're saying that out of your mouth. You're okay with that? I mean, you got to play it all the way out, right? So they actually have a point in that, in saying that this is unconstitutional, because it was. But we're not going to be dumb and say that the Republicans aren't benefiting from that, because they are. And that is the ongoing issue here. Now, depending on who you're listening to, they're going to give you all kinds of different legalese and all that kind of stuff. And quite honestly, a lot of us regular folks, we can't get into the weeds like that. And I'm not really trying to, but that's really the gist of it. But what is known is that, no, as Black Americans, we have not lost our voting power. We have not lost that at all. So anybody that's telling you that is a whole lie. Okay, so let's be clear about that. Okay, now, as far as the people that are out here saying this one person in particular, and I'm going to play a clip of this individual, but Democrats, particularly Black Democrats, have been very clear about their agenda when it comes to the Black voice in politics. And when I say the Black voice, I'm specifically talking about the Black American voice. Because, see, Black Americans for some time now have been very disappointed at political groups like the Congressional Black Caucus and some of these other powerful Black political organizations that claim to speak for Black Americans, because they have been avoiding, the concerns about Black Americans and wanting to make sure that our voices are being heard and not just blended in with everybody else. Do you understand what I'm saying? But on and on again, be it the Boule class, the Black Greek letter organization members, so forth and so on, they have gone way out of their way to make sure that they, when it comes to our voice, that they're really not that interested. And I have one person in particular here that I'm going to play. This is representative out of New York, I believe. Her name is Yvette D. Clark. I'm going to play this video clip here for you. Let me see if I can get it up here on the screen here. And let's take a listen to what she had to say in regards to her plan, as it pertains to, how she wants to see her district laid out. Let me get the video up here for you as I'm talking.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes. And those members could clearly fit here.
You can't do that. You can't do that. She's talking about bringing in illegals. She said, I need more of them. That's what she's saying in my district for redistricting purposes. She's saying that out of her mouth. You can't do that. You understand what I'm saying? And so, but I looked a little bit more in her background. It didn't take long at all. But yes, she is the daughter of Jamaican immigrants. So there you go, right? And she is a member of the Greek letter organization class. She's specifically a member of the Delta Sigma Theta. So this is the people, these are the voices that are out here right now that are screaming, talking about, oh, all black people, we're losing our voting. We can't vote anymore. This is going back to the days of Jim Crow. Oh, no, that's not happening at all. Okay. So again, if you want to play the game of politics, okay, we didn't create this system. They did. Okay. These folks did. Talking about the powers that shouldn't be. They created it. Okay, which means that there are no real rules. There aren't. Okay, so but we cannot, as a people, sit up here and believe that by putting our faith, hope, and trust in people that look like us in that system, if you really think that somehow these individuals in that system is somehow going to tear it down from the inside, no, that's not how it works. If you are accepted in the inside of a corrupt system, by default, you are corrupt. You have to be corrupt. And why is it so hard? Why is it so freaking hard for black folks to understand this? You think that somehow you're going to play out this Mr. Mr. whatever his name goes to Washington? You think you're going to play this out? You think you're going to play this out, that you're going to go in there? You know how, you see these scenes of black Democrats or whatever. At best, what do? There was this one video I saw, this black congresswoman. She had a bullhorn and screaming and hollering. Do you think that changed billions of dollars that the United States controls? And do you think they stopped and said, wait a minute? Oh, she got the bullhorn out now. Oh my goodness. Oh, look at them now. Now they're protesting. They're having a sit-in. Oh my God, they're having not a sit-in. You think that the United States government is moved by that? They're not. Okay? You might be, but they're not. Okay? So these individuals love to put into your minds that if you sing a little bit louder, you protest, you do this or you do that or whatever, that somehow, some way, they're going to, in the sweet by and by, they're going to have sympathy for you and say, you know what? Let's make some change. Let's help the poor black people. They don't give a damn. Okay? They don't. All right? Now, again, like I said, when it comes to voting, on the local level, it does make a difference. And that's something that you can actually measure. You can actually measure and you can actually take part in and be the change. Once you get to state level, once you get to federal level, no, absolutely not. And how many decades do we need to see that played out? But we voted in Obama, yeah, and black folks looking back now, playing Tuesday morning quarterback, or many black folks regret that vote. Why is it? Anyway, so let's move on. So you got that going on, okay? We're moving forward to our main topic. We're getting into that. There was another story that came out, another representative, L. Louise Lucas, and I'll try to put that on the screen. It was the FBI raided this individual here, and they said of some corruption that was going on. And boy, oh boy, once again on social media, oh my God, look at what Trump is doing. He's attacking the black women in politics. He's trying to shut them all down, and he's attacking them. This is an attack on all black people, and all this stuff. And it was like, no, that's not true at all. Because in fact, what these individuals are leaving out is that, yes, we can say that the Trump administration quite certainly is using it for political reasons. We're not in denial of that. But they are only acting on an investigation that took place during the Biden administration. In fact, the Biden administration initiated it because they looked into this individual and they saw how she was using her businesses and moving money in ways that was very shady. And the Biden administration took note of that. They started the whole process of investigating this individual. Now, why is it that individuals that are out here screaming and hollering, saying that we got to rally behind these black politicians because they're just simply black? Why is it that they leave things out like that? Because they count on your stupidity. They count on you staying in your emotions. These people are fully, their purpose is to keep you only operating in your amygdala and not using your prefrontal cortex. That is their whole purpose, is to do that, to keep you emotional and not thinking and not asking questions. Okay? And there's a lot of stories. One day I am going to put together a master list just in the last couple of years, just a couple of years, for all the politicians, black politicians, that in many of them, they would have first blacked this, they would have first blacked that. And you're going to see what happened, how they spent that capital. You're going to see, and I'm going to list it all out. Well, Dwayne, why is it that you're picking on black people? You know, every time I listen to it, it seems like you're just picking on black people. No, I'm not necessarily picking on black people. I just kind of believe, I don't know about you, but I just kind of believe that, you know, as a people, we should kind of hold ourselves to a standard and not looking over our shoulders and just quickly saying, but they do it, but they do it. I don't care what they do. I care about what we do. And if we cannot establish a standard, a high standard, something that that's attainable, that we can reach, but we have to reach it through truth, honesty, and justice. If we're always trying to measure ourselves to what we have always said is corrupt and bad and anti-black, then what's the point of what you're doing right now? Do you understand what I'm saying? So that is my point. I believe that we should hold ourselves to a high standard because our ancestors did it. And I mean, what's the problem with that? So yeah, I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm going to continue to stay on that. Okay. At the same time, we're going to always highlight, and we have been, and we're going to continue to do, to highlight those black individuals who are holding up that standard and are making a difference in the community, whatever you want to call it. Which reminds me, take a look at this image here that I created over on our community page, where I showed you that what we call today the black community is really based on servers. Let me say that again. What we call today the black community is pretty much based off of servers. It's not what we have in our minds, that there's this land of sugar canes and gumdrops and rainbows and all of that, and we're all connected together and we're like this net that works, you know, that kind of thing. That may have been at some time, but we got to be honest, people. We got to be honest. That is barely in existence today. What we see today and what we hear about discussed at great length on social media when it comes to the black community, or what we call the black community, is today based off of servers. And that is a dangerous thing because why? We don't own the servers. Okay. We don't own the servers, which means that there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. And there's a lot of stuff that we're not getting the truth. Okay, not everything are bots. Remember, I talked about this before. When you are talking to people face to face, you're getting the full version of them, right? Well, a fuller version of them. I'll just say it that way, because you see facial expressions, you're getting vocal cues, you're getting all of that stuff. But when you are online, all of that gets stripped away. You don't really see the person. You don't really hear the person. So that's why most of the time when you or I get on social media, what do we see? Just amongst black folks, things escalate to 10 just like that. because again, people misread one another. It happens all the time. There's a lot of fighting, arguing, debating, and all that kind of stuff. This is why, like I said, you got to get offline and start meeting some real people to alleviate that. You can't build a community online. You just can't. You can't. Okay. But that's what's happening. Okay. So anyway, let's move on. Upcoming. Nicole and I, my beautiful wife, Nicole, we have a video that we're going to be coming out where we're going to be taking a look at some of the latest things that is going on in the world of food manufacturing and some of the tricks and trickeries that they're doing right now with certain ingredients and all of that. So stay tuned for that. That will be a video that we're going to be doing in the next day or so from the time of this recording. So we'll do that here on this particular platform here. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Okay, so now let's get to our main story. Let's get to our main topic at hand here. And it's this ongoing onslaught. Now, let me be clear. I am not sitting up here and saying that, and when it, as a black man, I'm speaking as a black man, I am not saying that as black men, we are 100% innocent. We're innocent bystanders. There aren't things that we have done that we need to address. I talk about that all the time. There's a ton of things that we need to address. There's a ton of things that we need to be very honest about and admit to and take responsibility of. And so we can't run from that. Okay, so I'm very clear about that all the time, right? But we also have to be just as accurate when we say that there is an onslaught of attack on the black man as well. Okay, that is going on, just like I would say there's an onslaught attack on black women. But this system right now is favoring feminism. Okay, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the history in there a little bit. But recently there was some things that came across my timeline that I found to be quite interesting. There's this clip. I'm not going to play it, but I will show you something. I will show you. You guys know this actress. You should be familiar with her, Charlize Theron. She's from South Africa, and she and I'm not going to even play. I cannot. I'm not. I thought about playing a video, but I'm not playing this video. I mean, she just got a nasty mouth. I ain't got time to hear that. But here's the, I'll just put it up on the screen here. This is her here. And what she's saying here is this. She says she prefers freedom over relationships, has had one night stands, believes that there's nothing wrong with intimacy on the first date, and even recently hooked up with a 26-year-old at 50. Who has time for all the effort that comes with dating? I have children, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. Right. So she's on this podcast and she's, bragging about her sexual freedom and all of that stuff and how she's able to do this, that, or whatever. Right. But in the meantime, there was an article that came out. I think this is part of her little press tour that she was doing for, I think it was a Netflix movie or something that was out here. I'm trying to pull it up here. Oh, yeah, here it is. Here it is. And she said this. Let me pull this up here. This is what she said. She said that that her kids won't get a free ride in Hollywood. They need to earn it. Let's read the article a little bit. Charlize Theron is making it clear her children won't be growing up in a Hollywood safety net. During a candid conversation, the Oscar-winning actress shared her approach to parenting, revealing that she plans to instill independence with a strong work ethic in her daughters from an early age. First of all, your first car is going to be a Datsun because you are going to crash it, Theron said bluntly on the Therapist with Jake Shane podcast. You're going to blank it up somehow. You're a new driver, so we're not getting like the nice car up front. We need a little bit. She goes on, right? And talks about how, like a lot of these Hollywood types, they're saying that they're not going to help out their kids and all this other stuff, right? Well, we know that they do that all the time. They're going to do that. But what's interesting, she mentioned her daughters. Well, in reality, they're not, one is a daughter. but the other one is not. Okay, I think are both of them? Is the other child a daughter? I have to look. Maybe you can put that in the comments. But one certainly is not. One, she identified as transgender. She said at the age of 3, her child that she adopted, an African child that she adopted, came up to her and said, "I'm not a boy." And so she said, "Okay, fine, you're not. I'm going to start identifying you as a girl." And so from that point on, she just went with it, because we all know as parents that children know best. And so, especially at that age, a 3-year-old telling you that. So yeah. So she did, what these Hollywood types, and not so much Hollywood types. You got parents today that are millions or many miles away from Hollywood that will listen to their 2-year-old or 3-year-old that will tell them something like that, and they just run with it and say, "Okay, we're just going to rearrange everything. What do we know? We're just parents." And so that's how she raised this child, proudly. And like I said, again, it just happens that both of her children are black. And so here you have this boy that she has emasculated. And now you see him now that, he's like a teenager or whatever, and, got the long hair and all that kind of stuff. Oh, she's just so proud of this, my daughter, and all of that, refer to not him as a him, but refer to her as her, that kind of stuff, right? And this is what she's been putting out on full display, and everybody's like, oh, it's just such a proud thing. Well, she's not the only one. Like I said, there are many people out here in Hollywood that do that all the time. Even amongst some black entertainers, they've been doing that with their children as well. I'll maybe have some on the screen where they've done it as well. And with the people, it's such a proud thing. Well, if you follow this platform, I'm very blunt when I say these things. When I'm talking about this particular topic, it's not one that I'm shy of at all. I'll just say what it is. And no, you are not born that way. Now, if that offends you, I'm sorry. It's truth is truth. You were granted a penis, or you were granted a vagina for a particular purpose. And we will not see any example in nature where birds are literally stripping off their wings because they want to identify as a giraffe. You'll never see that. You'll never see a dog literally trying to whittle its way to a smaller size with his teeth because he doesn't like the way his body looks. You don't see that. And the only time you see a dog attacking himself or herself is when they are under great stress. That's the only time you'll see animals doing that. If you want to use nature as an example, well, there you go. There are many examples of that. You won't see any other or trees or whatever saying, "I'm tired of being a palm tree. I want to be a pine tree." You'll never see that. But somehow we know better. Somehow we're a little bit more educated on these matters. It speaks to something of a much deeper nature, and it requires help. It requires intervention. And when I say intervention, it doesn't necessarily mean that you got to take your 3-year-old and throw him on a couch somewhere and then you got to lecture him and all that stuff. It's not that. These are children. They're trying to learn the world that's around them. But if you're constantly immersing them in a world through your social media, through the things that you're watching on your phone and on TV, on the internet or whatever, they're learning by watching over your shoulder. And unfortunately, you got a lot of parents that will just, instead of sitting down and talking with their children, they'll just hand them a phone or an iPad and say, "Go at it. Learn about life." So if you're wondering why a lot of these children come back with these ideas, well, maybe it starts with the iPad that you gave them. But, this is where we are today. So that's one. But I want you to keep your thumb on that story. because there was another story that came out too. This is a model. Okay. The name is Aaron Rose Phillips. Okay. And I'm going to play a couple of videos there. And I want you to take a listen to this individual.
When I first started working, I was an anomaly to the industry. Arguably, in many ways today, really I still am. I think it's time to say the quiet part out loud. The fashion industry is unlikely to book or pay Black trans feminine and or physically disabled models to do runway, editorial, and or campaign because of an absence of whiteness.
Now, in this other video, this is a video where Aaron Rose Phillips was at the recent Met Gala, which I always thought is just such a ridiculous thing. Here, these same entertainers will get out here on their social media and talk about how the poverty, the poor, but yet they're wearing like multi-million-dollar dresses and suits and costumes and things like that. And that could have easily gone to help the poor. But anyway, and you got white people, black folks, all of that, people that are, and then it was funny to hear people like Jennifer Lewis get up here and was talking about, I can't understand how these black people were showing up at the at the Met Gala, because you got Jeff Bezos and how he treats, his employees and all that kind of stuff. And we need to take a stand as black folks against Jeff Bezos. Wait, what? But, is this her book on Amazon? Yeah. So much for taking a stand, Jennifer Lewis. Yeah, it kind of starts with you. And you also had Taraji, who also was saying some other stuff about, Jeff Bezos, we got to stand up against him and all of that stuff. And she's got stuff on Amazon too. Yeah. Anyway, I don't really care too much about that, but let's get back to Mr. and I am saying Mr. Phillips. And he's also a child of immigrants as well. I'll just throw that in there. But here's the thing. I'm not going to hold back on it. Of course, I'm not going to make any fun. I don't do that kind of stuff there. But here's the thing. If, I don't really, if you have a disability, you can't on one hand say, I have a disability, but you want to talk with your full chest, half chest, whatever, and you want to get out here and talk like that, okay, with all that thunder you got, okay, fine. Then that means, and then you want to be, I'm a person too, but you don't, okay, fine. I'm all with that. I'm always with that. I don't have people who are mentally, challenged and all of that kind of stuff. I still see them as humans. I've always said, I don't care what you are, gay, straight, mentally disabled, whatever it is, I am always going to treat you like any other human being until you give me a reason not to. I never have an issue with that. Never. Okay. Never have an issue when it comes to things like that. So with that being said, if you're going to come out like this individual did, Phillips came out and was, well, it's white supremacy that's doing all this stuff, okay, fine. Then you're opening yourself up to full criticism. So you don't ever have to worry about me being like, oh, I don't want to really say too much because he's in a wheelchair. He's got cerebral palsy. And no, I'm just going to address you. Okay. So, but here's the thing. When I sat back and I'm looking at this individual and, and I saw how people were just celebrating, oh, it's just such the bravery. It's just such the bravery and all that. That is not bravery. That's foolishness. Here you have a man. See, I'll call you a man. I'm not going to make up a name for you. Here you have a man who is suffering with cerebral palsy. And it's, as you can see, the body deformity and stuff that's going on there. And it's not a pleasant thing. And on top of that, his parents his black parents convinced him, helped or fortified his belief that he's actually a woman. So here you have this twisted body of a man in the wheelchair, dressed up like a woman. And now one of these bastards out here have the willingness to say, you look like a total fool right now. How can you say that? I say that with people who don't have any kind of condition. I don't care if he could walk, and that doesn't matter to me. I've said this. If you're a grown, rusty, dusty looking man and you wearing makeup and a wig and a dress, I'm going to say you look like a fool too. It doesn't matter. I'll say it either way. It doesn't matter. And so I'm sitting back and looking at this, and I'm seeing the amount of praise that this individual is getting. And what it made me realize is this. I said, this, between the Charlize Theron and what she did to her adopted black son and made him into what you see today. And this individual being praised for being brave, you know, for identifying as a trans or whatever. Not for anything as far as any masculinity that's there. Oh no, we don't want to acknowledge that. We want to acknowledge the fact that despite your deformity, that you still identify as a woman. That's what we praise. That's what we reward. And I said, you know what? These two examples, what they show me is that this is exactly the end game of feminism. And I had to go back here, and I'm going to read something to you, because I said, you know what? This will be a good time to remind people of the something that happened. You know, when you look at the history of feminism, there are different factors that contributed to the feminist, the modern day, the feminist movement. There are different factors that contributed to it. But there was one factor in particular that it cannot be discussed enough. And the feminist movement at the base, at the root, it started because of the hatred these white women had towards black men. See, you may have thought that feminism started because these women just didn't like their white men. No, they were tolerating the white men. It was the black men they didn't like. Well, let me read to you something. If you see me looking off on the screen, I'm going to read something to you, and just to give you a little bit of history, okay, and how that ties into what we're talking about now. After the passage of the 15th Amendment in 1870, black men were legally granted voting rights before women of any race received suffrage. This created intense resentment amongst some white suffragists, especially leaders like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, who publicly argued that educated white women should not be politically sidelined while formerly enslaved black men gained enfranchisement first. And here's some, and so Stanton, I'm going to give you some examples of just how racist she really was towards black men. She had not really say too much about white men, but it was black men. She had that fire when it came to that. And this was something that she said. These are just some of the examples of things she said. And this was in, I think it was in I guess it was a speech or a publication, one of the two. In the Revolution in 1869, Stanton argued, think of Patrick and Sambo and Hans and Young Tongue. Yeah, that's not a rapper. Well, probably is, but I mean, we got Young Thug, but yeah, Young. I'll read that again. Think of Patrick and Sambo and Hans and Young Tongue, who do not know the difference between a monarchy and a republic. Now, Patrick referred to the Irish immigrants because, as you know, the Irish, they went through a time where people really weren't liking them. Sambo, I think that's obvious. Okay. Hans, that was German immigrants because, again, German immigrants, they went through their time too. And then Young Tung, well, that's pretty obvious. That's the Chinese. And she was just equating these people as being very stupid, dumb, and ignorant. Okay. Well, it doesn't stop there. Stanton also warned that giving black men the vote before women would create an aristocracy of, I hope I'm saying that right, of sex. So she was just saying that, yeah, basically it's all about sex for them. And what she was implying is that while that white women were more deserving of political rights than black men due to race, education, and social status. Stanton argued that white women needed the vote to counterbalance the lower classes, Chinese, Africans, Germans, and the Irish. So this is the foundation of feminism. This is the foundation of feminism. Now, as we've discussed in great detail on this platform, later on, fast forward, get to like the early 70s, get into that time, black women took up the mantle of feminism and they rebranded it and called it womanism. We did several videos on that. Gave you the whole history of was it James Cone and all of that. We went through all of that. Gave you the entire history, the university that it came out of, and all of that, and showed you all of these women professors that all of them look like dykes and all black dykes and all of this. It's all there. This is all there that people take a lot of pride in. Black folks do. And so anyway, when it comes to so they took it, feminism, white feminism, and rebranded it and called it womanism. All right. And so you'll see that get thrown around a lot when the black women who are tied to this movement, they will sometimes interchangeably use feminism or they'll say womanism. But anytime you hear womanism, just know that that's the black version of feminism. That's what it is. And so what I want to show you is what you see on the screen here. I'm going to put this first one up. Now, this is a YouTuber some time ago that actually got taken down, I believe, with the efforts mainly of, I believe it was a white woman that took her down because she was putting this kind of content out where she was, hoping and praying that abortion could be used as a weapon to minimize the amount of black men that we have on the planet. Now, you may say, well, Dwayne, you're just talking one person. No, she had a very strong following of black women. Very strong following. And I don't know where she is right now, but she had a very strong following. And she's not by herself. There are many other women black women have said similar things. I mean, we could do videos on that. And so, I remember there was a video going around of an audio, how on X, how they have like these discussion groups, you can hear people talking and all of that. And it was one in particular, you had black women talking to white men, and these black women were referring to black men as bullet bags, meaning that that's all they were worth, bags of bullets. And they were saying this to white men, trying to kind of get closer to white men. Now, again, do they represent all black women? Absolutely not. I've said that over and over again. We're talking a certain class of black women who are very vocal on social media. Now I want to show you this image. Now, this is a comment. Someone had a post that someone posted here, and they were talking about something else we did a video on. We talked about the declining birth rates of black Americans. And a lot of black folks don't want to talk about that, but the truth is the truth. There is a decline of birth rates across the board here in the United States, in particular, also in Europe too. I mean, you'll see it as well. the countries where you'll find the highest birth rates is in Africa. Africa, particularly places like Nigeria and Kenya, and other areas up there, you'll see a very high birth rate. Like it's very, to these elite, they're very scared of it. That's why you have people like Bill Gates over there pushing all this eugenic stuff over there. But here in America, because we, as black folks, we're here in the West, we follow what Western culture does. So Western culture has been on this thing for a long time that we don't need men. We don't need, we don't need women. We don't need to get married and all of this other stuff. So black folks likewise have followed that trend. And take a look at this. So anyway, so the post was basically talking about that. It was saying black birth decline was the steepest among any group in this country. And our fertility rate has been below replacement for years. It's not looking good for black Americans. Again, like I said, we've talked about this quite extensively. And take a look at how this person responded. They said, "This is great news!" ! Everybody blamed black women for the poor state of the black community and told us to be accountable. Well, this is accountability, no longer birthing the problem. Now, again, you may say, well, Dwayne, you're just pulling just one example and you're going to say all black women. Again, like I said, this is not representative of all black women, but there are a growing number, a significant number of black women who do embrace that ideology. Along with this ideology that, when it comes to, how black women see black men and how black men see black women, and it's being fueled by this platform that we call social media. All right. We're seeing it happening on both sides, but I wanted to do this video specifically to talk about this onslaught that we see going against black men, where there are holding up these examples of a very effeminized, very broken, I might add, bodies of black men and saying, this is what we envision the black man to look like, to be something we can control, something we can encourage and manipulate. This is what's being held up right now. And it's funny, and I'm going to close out with this. My daughter and I, we've talked about this quite often. I mean, we could sit down and be watching, I don't know, it could be anything on TV. And just about every male voice we hear sounds gay. I mean, just about all of them do. And I'm like, can they not find a voice with some bass in it that ain't gay? And they're not gay? I mean, it's not that all gays have, you got gay people who got deep voices or whatever, and they, whatever, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about masculinity, real masculinity. And what we're being taught and shown and force-fed is that masculinity is something that's evil, is something that has to be controlled, is something that has to be broken. And that's what this individual that I showed you, Aaron Rose Phillips, that's exactly what they represent. That they held this individual up as an example of what they want all black men to be. Literally to look just like this individual. And we're supposed to sit back and allow this individual just to say whatever the heck they want. And then you're going to be some kind of mouthpiece against white. No. You're not fit for the battle. Let me just say that. You're not fit for the battle. You're not. And you're not dressed for it. And we need more people, both men and women, standing up and saying it just as it is. And stop being so freaking intimidated because of this nonsense where, I can't say anything. They're special. No, you're special too. We're all special. We ain't short bus special. Well, at least I hope you're not. But we can say that. And like I said, you treat these people, you don't get, like I said again, you don't get to on one hand demand that you're treated just like everybody else. But then when what you're coming out of your full mouth is something that sounds ridiculous, you don't get some special privilege where we're like, oh, I can't say anything because, no, you get the same, equal rights, get equal lefts. I mean, I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? That's just how it works. So anyway, I hope you guys got something out of this video here. And, we're just going to tell it like it is here on this platform. And that's it. Like I said, going to keep it respectful and all of that. But make no mistake about it. When it comes, we are 100% pro-family here. The black man, the black woman, and black children. That is how you build what we want to call a black community. It starts with that. Period. Okay. We don't do the whole, celebrating on Father's Day by handing out Mother's Day's card. We don't do that kind of stuff. We honor our women. We honor women who are honorable. Let me just say that we honor men who are honorable. We don't blanketly want to just honor all women and call all women queens, because not all women are queens, just like all men are not kings. I don't do that here. That is something that, that's a high thing to achieve here. Let's bring some dignity back to those titles. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just labeling everybody a king or queen, how about that means something? You know what I mean? Instead of just messing that up and you just labeling everybody that. So there's a lot that we need to work on, but it starts with us being straight up and being honest with one another. And that's what we try to do here on this platform. So anyway, if you have anything to add to this conversation, make sure you put it in the comments below. Love to hear from you. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys take care, and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.